Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO. Our next guest, good friend of the show, it's Scott Braddock, editor of Quorum Report. What's going on, Scott?
We are waiting for that Arctic air mass to make its way down south across the great state, Chad. I think this afternoon and into the evening we'll be in the 30s.
Ooh, that's
Austin.
warm.
Yeah, balmy 37 tonight in Austin compared to, what did you say, 13 tomorrow in Lubbock?
Yeah, it's supposed to be anywhere from 13 to 16 degrees overnight.
Wow, well, here we are. It's finally winter. I was pulling all the coats and scarves and gloves and all that stuff out of the closet. Of course, some of those things got lost, so I guess I'll have to buy more stuff. I actually was having not an argument, but it did get a little ugly recently. Last week, my daughter, who's 18, wanted to argue about which coat she needs. And by the way, when you are buying coats or cold weather clothing for children, it's one of the prime examples of why kids need parents, right? Because they don't know how to make decisions. This coat looks cool. I'm like, yeah, but it's going to be 30. That one won't do the job. So you need the Columbia, the outerwear with the fleece inside, the 2-in-1 and all of that. She wasn't going for that, but she ended up with the right one.
Well, that's good.
Because you got to pull the dad card.
Yeah, you have to. You have to.
Yeah, you're going to freeze otherwise.
Exactly. You're looking out for her. She will appreciate that. When it's balmy 37, she'll appreciate it.
Well, I was trying to explain to her that if you live in New York City, your coat can be a fashion statement, right? Because you have to wear it all the time.
Right.
In Texas, you just need one that's going to keep you warm and dry, and when you get where you're going, you take it off.
Yeah.
So whatever you're wearing under that is what your fashion statement is. 18-year-olds don't quite process that. But, hey, by the way, I wanted to thank you for joining me last week on the Mark Davis Show. It was cool to be asked to do that in Dallas-Fort Worth. I know your old stomping grounds, and it was an interesting situation. But lots of my friends, including you, stepped up to the plate, had lots of great guests on the show. And was really a good radio show. I still know how to do this radio thing, apparently.
That's good. Well, no, I appreciate you reaching out. It's always fun to do that. Scott, we actually had some news over the weekend, and I want to start off it's a battle that the average Texas voter, and maybe in particular Republican voters, may or may not care about. I don't know. And that is the battle for state chairman for the Republican Party.
I was in San Antonio on Friday, and, of course, because it's San Antonio, they had a mariachi band play the candidates onto the stage. I actually did 2 songs while the candidates stood there and listened. Very respectful. They were a very good mariachi band, by the way. A couple of interesting things about this. One, you have, and I think you've had both these guys on your show. Is that right?
No, I have.
Have you not had Alan West?
We have not. Well, no, we have not had Alan West on the show.
I know Chairman Dickey is doing media rounds, and he's been, trying to get out ahead of this campaign, which I think could turn nasty. And by the way, I told the retired Lieutenant Colonel West on Friday, I said, hey, listen, I have had a good working relationship with every RPT chairman, every GOP chairman in this state, going back 15 years, back to before he even lived in Texas. I didn't say it that way, but, he is an interesting character, right? He's got a national following. He's somebody who appears on Fox News Channel and at some point on the Chad Hasty Show as well. And here you have a guy who has, just sort of conservative cred, right? I mean, grassroots activists like Alan West, African-American, military veteran, was in the U.S. Army. And when he was debating James Dickey, who has spent probably about a decade working in Republican politics in Texas, when he was debating him, West really put the focus on his life story. Most of what he talked about was growing up as an African-American in the South and being a conservative and what it means to be a black conservative, and also being in the military. And Dickey, for his part, was putting the focus on building party infrastructure, the unsexy stuff, if you will. Here's some of what I heard in this debate, and part of why I think this is going to get nasty, because you do have social issues that are very important to the grassroots, of course, and they were in front of a crowd in San Antonio, probably about 100 people, something like that, and I think they've committed to doing one debate a month until the Republican Party of Texas convention next year. And so I think these will get more amped up as time goes on, Chad. That's just what happens in these things. And by the way, anytime you cover a race where basically the candidates agree about the issues, that's when it gets the nastiest, right? Because then it becomes, the things that differentiate them are things that are personal.
Right.
Right? And remember that was the case with David Dewhurst versus now Senator Cruz back in the day. Same thing with Cruz and Dan Patrick and David Dewhurst, on issues they pretty much agree. So it becomes a referendum on who they are as people and who do you want to see in those positions. Dickey was talking a lot about the need for Republicans especially, and he didn't focus on the speaker's issue, which we've talked about here on the show quite a bit, but it's pretty clear that the rest of Republican leadership is going to have to step up in big ways if Republicans are going to hold the majority in the Texas House. Because you have, and by the way, I was talking to some political professionals last week here in Austin. They were saying, look, voters don't care about that scandal. It's so over for people. I mean, even if they did care as it was unfolding, it's kind of over now because Bonin has said that he's leaving. But the fact that he's leaving sort of leaves a vacuum in Republican leadership. One of the things that the Speaker is supposed to do is, collect funds and then support Republican members of the House in their reelection efforts. The eye-popping number that Dickey gave, he said that the total amount spent on politics on both sides, Republicans and Democrats, races up and down the ballot, the total political spend in Texas will be around $1 billion.
Wow.
That's huge. And that's why he said it's very important to shore up party infrastructure and have that infrastructure ready to be deployed for GOP candidates up and down the ballot. And when he says party infrastructure, he doesn't just mean money. He means other resources, too, like voter lists, voter data, all that sort of stuff. You also have the Republican Party of Texas right now engaging in what they're calling this volunteer program to try to find and register new Republican voters. And as you and I have talked about, that's a new thing for Republicans in this state to actively be out there spending resources trying to find people who are probably Republicans but aren't registered to vote yet. Last week at Quorum Report, we reported that the Republicans now think that there's about 1.5 million likely Republican voters in this state who are not yet registered. So they're micro-targeting folks, trying to figure out if they would be Republican, and if they would be, then get them registered to vote. And that's sort of, some people think that that's kind of hocus-pocus, kind of a magic trick to try to find people who might be a Republican. But there are things you can do to try to, figure out whether or not people are Republican. I mean, basic things like, for example, if, somebody has subscriptions to gun magazines, for example, they're probably not a Democrat.
Right.
Probably,
yeah.
Right? I mean, there are things like that they can kind of ferret things out and figure out, where people go to church and that sort of thing. They can figure those things out as well. Are they, an evangelical, conservative, and those sorts of things? So they're working on that. And it's going to be critical, I think, that this race between these two guys, works out in a way that's good for the Republican Party if Republicans want to hold that majority. I don't think President Trump is in any danger of losing Texas. I know some people think that, although his campaign, President Trump's campaign, is doing things in Texas that make you think, look, they at least want to do better than they did last time when Trump beat Hillary Clinton in Texas by 9 points. I can tell you, in observing the apparatus of the Republican Party in Texas for the last 15 years, it has always done better and elected more Republican candidates when the person who is the chair was focused on party infrastructure and not on identity politics. I had a few conservatives come up to me after the debate and say that they like Allen West, and they think that he's a strong spokesman for being conservative and all of that. But they're concerned that he's not focused on and has never run an organization that is similar to the Republican Party of Texas. The chairman says that they have about $3 million on hand right now to work to elect more Republicans, and at the same time, West had said on stage, and this is a direct quote, he said, it doesn't matter how much money you have if you have a message that's crappy. So you can tell where his focus is.
Yeah.
And over the years, that 15 years, whenever the party is focused on infrastructure and supporting candidates, that's when more Republicans have been elected.
Well, and again, this comes down to who's going to vote for the chairman. And I know we're early on in this process, and it seems to me when Allen West, when the rumors were Allen West was going to get involved in this, my thought immediately turned into, okay, this is going to be a race between a type of activist, because I think it's fair to say James Dickey's not. He wants to win, obviously, but I don't see him as necessarily as an activist who's out in front of the cameras all the time. So someone who is behind the scenes putting together an organization versus an activist, which, that's Alan West. I mean, listen, if you're a conservative, you probably love Alan West. He gets on TV. Sure. He defends conservative values.
They love him.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting in front of the cameras. How much can Alan West actually, run an organization? I think is a fair question.
Yep.
Is that the race, though, in a nutshell? A guy who has the organizational power versus a guy who can get on media whenever he wants to?
There's a balance, right? You have to be able to raise money. It's a unique set of skills that a person has to have to raise money for a party. When donors are, writing checks, it's a lot easier for a candidate to make the appeal to a contributor and say, I need your money to be able to win my race. It's a different kind of argument to say, I need your money to be able to be a support system for candidates all across the state. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, you have Governor Abbott, who's not on the ballot, but as an example, Abbott can say to certain donors, I need $1 million for my campaign, and some will actually step up and write that check for him. For a party, you have to make the case that what the party's there to do is support the candidates who share your values. And I think maybe another way to say what you're saying is you have two guys who are both Republican activists, but one is a celebrity and one has honed his skills as a tactician in trying to, in trying to support Republican candidates. And one of the things that Dickey said I thought was interesting. He said we should be working as a party toward figuring out how to make sure that if you're running for Texas House, Texas Senate, or for any office as a Republican in the state, you should have access to the same kind of resources that the President of the United States would have if he snapped his fingers in his campaign and said, I need this or I need that.
Let's go to another issue that really blew up over the weekend, Scott, and that is Rodney Reed.
Yeah.
This has gotten some bipartisan, unity around this issue.
Very interesting. Usually when there's an outcry to halt an execution in Texas, which of course happens now and then because we do so many of them, we lead the nation, of course, the activity in the death chamber in Huntsville. 33, I believe we're up to 33 now. It's around that many. Republican Texas House members have come out and said that this case warrants at least another look. They're not saying that necessarily free Rodney Reed. I got back to Austin. It just happened to work out this way. I got back to Austin from San Antonio after that Republican debate, and as I got back to Austin, there was this huge protest in front of the governor's mansion. You can see the pictures there on my Twitter at Scott Braddock. There were just hundreds of people. I'm not sure how many, but hundreds of people were outside the mansion, chanting "Free Rodney Reed." And there was some law enforcement folks who were speaking to the crowd. It's usually not law enforcement speaking to a crowd like that, but there has been some question raised about whether or not this guy actually committed the crime that he was accused of, this murder in Bastrop County. And it's always interesting when there are Republicans joining in, conservatives saying, I think maybe we need to take another look at this. Some very conservative lawmakers, Matt Krause from Tarrant County, Jeff Leach from Collin County, and some others are asking the governor to just, go with the reprieve here. They're not asking for clemency right out of the, they're not asking to let the guy go. And it may even be one of those cases. And by the way, I will admit, I'm not an expert on all the details of this case, and I saw where people have been writing furiously about the idea that this guy Rodney Reed was a brutal rapist and somebody who is not a good guy. But in Texas, it's important to state that rape is not punishable by death in this state. There are only a few things that you can be put to death for. And that's not one of them. And so, look, maybe the guy needs to spend the rest of his life in prison, based on some of the other accusations that have been made. But I think to the politics of this, which I will say, Chad, I am an expert on that. So when Governor Perry was in office, there were various cases where the death penalty was in question for certain death row inmates. And there was one case in particular, the case of Cameron Todd Willingham, who had committed or was accused of committing murders in the Corsicana area. There was some very compelling evidence that he did not do it, and Governor Perry did not step in. And his answer was simply to say, look, Cameron Willingham was a bad man. I'm not sure where Governor Abbott's going to come down on this. I would expect that if he is going to issue what amounts to a stay and, let the courts take another look at this, because there's been some new testimony that folks want to get entered into evidence in this case. If he's going to give that a chance, I would think he might end up doing that at the last minute. And it's a matter of days now before he would be put to death. So the pressure is growing. The execution set for November 20th. And this also has the attention of a lot of celebrities. By the way, some celebrities that President Trump listens to. Kim Kardashian, she's got his attention. But, some of the biggest celebrities, Beyonce, Oprah Winfrey, and others. But, I don't know that they make a difference to Governor Abbott. It would be interesting if Trump weighed in at the behest of Kim and said, hey, maybe...
It's always possible.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was thinking about yesterday as I was thinking about what had happened at that protest. Maybe Trump tweets out, they ought to give him some more time down there. So we'll see what happens. But it's got the attention of the world, basically, and how this plays out at this point, completely up to the governor. I talked to some lawmakers over the weekend who privately said that they have been in contact with the governor's office and that he is giving it some consideration. And actually some said that they heard some what they consider to be positive things in the direction of maybe holding off on this execution, but others simply said, and one did say on the record that they didn't get a sense from the governor's office where he was going to come down on this, so it's all up to him.
Hey, Scott, can we do one more segment with you? We got to take a break, and I want to get two more subjects in, including a Veterans Day issue that you had emailed me about. Can you hold on for one more segment?
It's my pleasure. Yes, sir.
All right, let's do that. Let's take the break. We'll be right back. Chad Hasty Show, KFYO. All right, we're back. Chad Hasty Show, KFYO. Scott Braddock, editor of Quorum Report, joining me. And Scott, you wrote a piece for veterans, honoring veterans by committing to their future success.
Yeah, one of the things that's sort of a passion project for me, and people who listen to KFYO know me for doing politics, but one of the things that I also do is I'm a contributor at a website called ConstructionCitizen.com, based out of Houston, and part of this has to do with my own life story, and I'm not always comfortable talking about myself, Chad, but I'll do it for this reason. I'm a high school dropout. I have a GED. And I was able to have, if you can call what I do being a success, then look, there was a path for me to where I am now that was not conventional. I didn't go to college. I didn't go to the fancy, journalism school or any of that stuff. I just worked hard and worked a lot in radio and ended up where I am, somehow. I guess, I'm not the smartest or best-looking guy, Chad, but no one will outwork me. And I do think that there's a path to success for everyone, regardless of their education level, and it's why I do a lot of this work, just matching people with careers, particularly in construction, in the Southeast Texas area. And part of that is putting veterans to work, because we have, across this country, about 250,000 veterans who are leaving service, transitioning out of their military service every year in this country, and construction is a great match for them because a lot of the skills that they've learned through their military service are easily transferable to the construction industry. It's not the only option for them, but it is a good one. And so we do have information about this at ConstructionCitizen.com. We partner with a lot of different folks to make it happen. One of the programs here in Texas is Texas Operation Welcome Home, which is run through the Workforce Commission. And I just think it's important that we not just say that we support our veterans in our various communities, but that we also do what it takes to make sure that they're successful when they come back, because those transitions for them are very difficult. There's a huge suicide rate among veterans. I'm sure you know a lot about that and have talked about it. And one of the things that has to happen is we rally around our veterans. It's a perfect day to think about that, read about that, and check out what's going on. We've got it there at ConstructionCitizen.com.
Very good. As always, you can find out more at ConstructionCitizen.com and, of course, on the politics side at QuorumReport.com. Scott, thank you very much.
Thank you. Talk soon.
All right. That's Scott Braddock, editor, Quorum Report.